Entity ID, or sometimes also referred to as the service provider entity ID, is the ID that uniquely identifies us as the plugin to the identity provider. So it's important that they match on both sides, so that where the service provider configuration on the IDP, the entity ID is the same as we have configured in our plugin. By default, we use the base URL with our SAML SSO path behind it. So it looks like a URL, but it doesn't have to be a URL. It's just important that both sides use the same string. So sometimes you might get a request from your identity provider to use a certain service provider entity ID, then you can set it here. Or it might also look like if you changed your base URL at some point that the entity ID still has the old ID. That can be fine as long as it's the same on both sides. When you choose the reset to default button, we will reset it to the current base URL of your instance with the SAML SSO path behind it. So the default value that we use. If you have an active configuration with any IDPs and you change that entity ID or reset it to default so that it changes, then make sure that it gets updated on the IDP. Usually the simplest way to do that is if the IDP just reloads our metadata to make sure it has the most up-to-date configuration. Otherwise, single sign-on will fail.